Nashville, Tennessee. RCA Studio B. March 3rd, 2:30 a.m. The most legendary recording studio in country music is buzzing with activity. But tonight, it's not country music being made. The Temptations, fresh off their success with Just My Imagination, are in Nashville working on new material that they hope will keep them at the top of the charts. The 5 members of the group are gathered around the piano with their producer, working on vocal arrangements for a song called Superstar. Remember How You Got Where You Are. It's a powerful ballad about staying humble despite success, and they've been perfecting it for hours. David Ruffin is at the microphone, his distinctive raspy voice filling the studio as he works through the lead vocal. Eddie Kendricks provides his trademark falsetto harmonies. Paul Williams, Melvin Franklin, and Otis Williams round out the sound that has made the Temptations one of the most successful groups in music history. But at 2:30 a.m., their concentration is broken by the sound of the studio door opening. Everyone assumes it's their producer returning from a coffee run, or maybe a late-night maintenance worker. Instead, a man in faded jeans, a simple white t-shirt, and work boots walks into the studio. No jumpsuit, no pompadour, no entourage. He looks like a regular guy who might have wandered in from the street, which is exactly what the Temptations think has happened. "Excuse me," David Ruffin says, looking at the intruder. "This is a closed session. You need to leave." The man doesn't move. He's looking around the studio with obvious familiarity, like he knows every piece of equipment, every microphone, every acoustic quirk of the room. "I'm sorry," he says in a distinctive southern drawl. "I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just passing by and heard the music. Sounded beautiful." This is creative storytelling, inspired by Elvis's well-documented love of spontaneous musical collaborations and his deep respect for Motown artists. Eddie Kendricks walks over to the stranger. "Look, man, we appreciate that you like what you heard, but this is a professional recording session. You can't just walk in here." The man nods apologetically. "You're absolutely right. It's just, I know this studio pretty well. Recorded a lot of music here over the years. When I heard y'all singing, I couldn't resist listening. That song you're working on, it's something special." Paul Williams laughs. "You know this studio? What are you, a janitor or something?" The man smiles. "Something like that." Melvin Franklin, the bass singer with the deepest voice in popular music, studies the stranger more carefully. There's something familiar about him, but he can't place it. "What's your name?" Melvin asks. "Elvis," the man says simply. "Elvis Presley." The studio falls completely silent. 5 members of the Temptations stare at the man in jeans and a t-shirt, trying to process what they've just heard. David Ruffin breaks the silence first. "Man, that's not funny. Elvis Presley doesn't look like that." "Like what?" Elvis asks, genuinely curious. "Like a regular person," Eddie Kendricks says. "Elvis Presley wears gold jumpsuits and has that big hair and travels with a bunch of guys in matching outfits," Paul Williams adds. Elvis laughs. "Well, it's 3 in the morning. I'm not performing tonight. This is just how I look when I'm not working." Otis Williams, the group's leader and most practical member, approaches Elvis skeptically. "Prove it. If you're really Elvis Presley, sing something." Elvis considers this for a moment. Then he walks over to the piano and sits down. He plays a few chords and begins singing "Love Me Tender," but not the way the world knows it. This version is stripped down, intimate, almost like a lullaby. The 5 members of the Temptations exchange glances. The voice is unmistakable, but the presentation is nothing like the Elvis they know from television and movies. When he finishes, Melvin Franklin shakes his head in amazement. "Damn, it really is you. What are you doing here?" David Ruffin asks. "I mean, it's almost 3 in the morning and you just walked in?" Elvis stands up from the piano. "I was driving around Nashville, couldn't sleep. Sometimes I do that when I'm trying to work through something. I saw the lights on in the studio and heard music. I know I shouldn't have just walked in, but your voices. Man, you guys sound incredible. Eddie Kendricks is still processing the situation. You were just driving around Nashville by yourself? No bodyguards? No manager? Sometimes a man needs to be alone with his thoughts, Elvis says, and his music. The Temptations look at each other uncertainly. This casual, humble version of Elvis Presley is nothing like the larger-than-life figure they expected to meet. So, what were you working through? Paul Williams asks. What's keeping you up at night? Elvis hesitates, then decides to be honest. Music. Always music. I've been thinking about how music can bring people together. You know, how it can cross lines that society says shouldn't be crossed. Otis Williams nods slowly. We know something about crossing lines. I bet you do, Elvis says. Being successful black artists in America, that takes courage. I can't imagine. The casual way Elvis acknowledges race, without awkwardness or pretension, surprises all 5 group members. In 1971, many white artists still avoided discussing racial issues directly. You know, Melvin Franklin says, "We've always respected your music, but we never really knew where you stood on," and other things. I stand with good music and good people, Elvis says. Color's got nothing to do with either one. David Ruffin, who's been the most skeptical about this unexpected visitor, softens slightly. That song we were working on when you came in, what did you think of it? Honest opinion? Elvis asks. Honest opinion. It's beautiful. The melody is strong. The message is important. But it could use something more. Something that gives it an edge. What kind of edge? Eddie Kendricks asks. Elvis walks back to the piano. Mind if I show you instead of telling you? The Temptations exchange glances again. Then Otis Williams nods. Show us. Elvis begins playing the opening chords to Superstar, but with a different rhythm. Instead of the smooth, polished Motown sound they've been developing, he adds a country blues feeling that makes the song grittier and more emotional. Try singing it like this, Elvis says to David Ruffin. Like you're talking to someone who really needs to hear the message. Like it's personal. David approaches the microphone and begins singing the song with Elvis's arrangement. The combination of David's soulful voice with Elvis's raw piano accompaniment creates something neither Motown nor country music has heard before. The other Temptations instinctively begin adding their harmonies to this new arrangement. Eddie's falsetto soars over the bluesy piano. Melvin's bass provides a foundation that's both solid and flexible. Paul and Otis add texture and complexity to the vocal blend. What emerges is unlike anything any of them has recorded before. It's Motown soul with country heart. It's gospel passion with blues honesty. It's black artistry with white artistry, creating something that transcends both. When the song ends, the studio is silent again. But this time, it's not confusion, it's awe. Damn, David Ruffin says quietly. That was different, Eddie Kendricks finishes. Good, different, Paul Williams adds. Elvis stands up from the piano. You guys want to try something completely new? What do you have in mind? Otis Williams asks. What if we wrote something together, right now? Something that comes from all of us, not just one person's idea. Melvin Franklin laughs. You want to write a song with the Temptations at 3 a.m. in RCA Studio B? Why not? Elvis asks. When's the last time any of us did something just because we wanted to, not because it was scheduled or planned or approved by somebody else? The 5 members of the Temptations look at each other. They're successful enough that they don't have to take risks anymore. But there's something appealing about the spontaneity Elvis is suggesting. What would we write about? David Ruffin asks. This, Elvis says, gesturing to the 6 of them standing in the studio. This moment. 6 guys from different backgrounds, different styles, different worlds, coming together at 3 a.m. to make music, just for the love of it. Brotherhood, Eddie Kendricks says suddenly. That's what we're talking about. Brotherhood through music. Elvis nods. Brotherhood. That's perfect. For the next 2 hours, the 6 men work together to create something entirely new. Elvis contributes country and gospel influences. The Temptations bring soul and R&B expertise. Together, they craft a song that tells the story of their unexpected meeting and the musical magic that resulted. They call it Midnight Brotherhood. The lyrics tell the story of barriers being broken down by music, of strangers becoming collaborators, of art transcending the divisions that society tries to impose. Elvis sings the verses, his voice rougher and more emotional than his usual recordings. The Temptations provide harmonies that are unlike anything in their catalog, looser, more spontaneous, but no less sophisticated. The bridge features all 6 voices singing together in a complex arrangement that David Ruffin creates on the spot. It's gospel-influenced, but not religious, soulful, but not exclusively black, country-influenced, but not exclusively white. It's just music, pure, honest, collaborative music. By 5 a.m., they've worked out a complete arrangement. It's not polished like a studio album, but it has something that many polished recordings lack: authenticity. "We should record this," Paul Williams says. "I mean, really record it. Professional quality." Elvis shakes his head. "No, I don't think so." The Temptations are surprised. "Why not?" Otis Williams asks. "Because the moment we start thinking about recording contracts and producers and which label gets to release it, it stops being about the music and starts being about the business," Elvis explains. "This was about 6 guys making music because they wanted to. Let's keep it that way." Eddie Kendricks understands immediately. "You mean, keep it pure?" "Exactly. Some things are too special to commercialize." Melvin Franklin nods slowly. "Like a secret that only we know." "Right. Something that happened just for us. Just for tonight." As the sun begins to rise over Nashville, the 6 men sit in RCA Studio B, exhausted but exhilarated. They've created something beautiful together, something that will exist only in their memories and in this moment. "You know, David Ruffin says to Elvis, 'You're not what I expected.'" "What did you expect?" Elvis asks. "I don't know. Someone more famous, I guess. More like the guy on TV." Elvis laughs. "That guy's my job. This is who I am." "I like who you are better," Eddie Kendricks says. The Temptations pack up their instruments and prepare to leave. Elvis does the same, gathering his jacket and keys. "Will we see you again?" Otis Williams asks. "Maybe," Elvis says. "If you're ever recording late at night and need an uninvited guest." "You'll always be invited," Paul Williams says. "After tonight, you're family." They shake hands, then embrace. 6 men who were strangers 12 hours ago, now connected by something deeper than friendship. As they leave RCA Studio B, Melvin Franklin turns back to Elvis. "That song we wrote, Midnight Brotherhood, what happens to it now?" End. Quote. End. Elvis smiles. "It lives in the music. Every time any of us performs, every time we create something new, that song is there. It's part of who we are now." The Temptations drive back to their hotel, talking excitedly about the night they've just experienced. They'll tell this story for the rest of their lives. But they'll never record Midnight Brotherhood. They'll keep Elvis's wishes and let it remain what it was meant to be, a moment of pure musical connection. Elvis drives back to his hotel alone, but he doesn't feel alone. He feels connected to something larger than himself, something that exists in the space between different kinds of music, different kinds of people. Over the next several months, both Elvis and the Temptations notice changes in their music. Elvis begins incorporating more soul and R&B influences into his recordings. The Temptations experiment with country and gospel elements that they'd never used before. Music critics notice these changes but can't explain them. They don't know about the night at RCA Studio B. about the song that was created and never recorded, about the brotherhood that was formed between six men from different worlds. The influence of that night spreads in ways that are subtle but significant. Musicians who work with Elvis or the Temptations hear stories about their new musical approaches and begin experimenting with cross-genre collaborations of their own. In interviews years later, members of the Temptations would sometimes reference a magical night in Nashville without giving details. Elvis, in his rare candid interviews, would talk about the importance of musical brotherhood and the power of spontaneous creativity. But they never revealed the full story of what happened at RCA Studio B on March 3, 1971. It remained their secret, their shared treasure. This story is creative storytelling inspired by Elvis's documented respect for Motown artists and his love of spontaneous musical collaborations. While this specific encounter is fictional, it represents the kind of cross-cultural musical exchange that was happening throughout the 1960s and 1970s as barriers between different genres began to break down. Elvis Presley was indeed known for his late-night drives around Nashville, and he did sometimes show up unexpectedly at recording studios. The Temptations were among the many Motown artists who spoke positively about Elvis's influence on popular music and his respectful approach to black musical traditions. The song Midnight Brotherhood exists only in this story, but the spirit it represents, the idea that music can transcend racial, cultural, and genre boundaries when artists approach each other with respect and openness, was very real and very important during this period of music history. RCA Studio B, where this fictional encounter takes place, was indeed one of the most important recording facilities of the era. Everyone from Elvis to Dolly Parton to the Everly Brothers recorded there, and it was known for the relaxed, creative atmosphere that encouraged exactly the kind of spontaneous collaboration described in this story. The real lesson of this imagined encounter is about the power of humility, respect, and openness in creating art. When Elvis walks into that studio as just a person, not as a superstar, he's able to connect with the Temptations as fellow artists rather than as a celebrity meeting his fans. When the Temptations see past Elvis's fame to his genuine musical passion, they're able to collaborate with him as an equal rather than as an icon to be worshipped or resented. The decision to keep their collaboration private, to not commercialize their moment of musical magic, preserves something precious that might have been lost if it had been turned into a product. In our modern era of social media and constant documentation, the idea of creating something beautiful and then keeping it private seems almost impossible. But there's wisdom in understanding that some experiences are too sacred to share with the world. The midnight brotherhood that forms between these six men represents the best of what music can be. A universal language that speaks to our common humanity, regardless of race, background, or genre preference. Whether this specific encounter happened or not, moments like it were happening all over America as musical barriers began to break down and artists began to recognize their shared passion for creating something beautiful. If this story inspired you to think about the power of spontaneous creativity, about the importance of approaching other artists with respect and openness, I need you to do something right now. Subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell, because next week we're exploring another moment when music transcended boundaries and created magic. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had a moment of spontaneous creativity that surprised you? Have you ever connected with someone through music in a way that changed both of you? Share this video with any musician or music lover in your life. Let them know that the best art often happens when we stop trying to control it and start letting it flow naturally. Because